Don't forget, persecution of the church is the final drop that fills the cup of iniquity that makes the world ripe for judgment. Persecution of the church. That's the worst sin. That's worse than homosexuality. That's worse than open fornication. To persecute the church. That church is the bride of Christ. His own precious possession that he loves, for which he gave his life. I think, is Christ going to allow the world to rape his bride? You think so? To abuse her, to torture her, to kill her, to shut her mouth? Christ will not stand for that. He can't. He's our husband. What earthly husband, even who loves his wife, will be willing to give her over to the abuse of the ungodly? That's the farthest from a man's mind. Is not Christ more in love with his church than any of us can be with our wives? He gave his own blood for the church. And when the wicked rape her, he's filled with fury and will certainly destroy. And so that whole development of sin that culminates in the Antichrist, the man of sin, who embodies in himself the whole history of sin in the world, will stand before Christ. There you will be. Then where will be his loud boastings? Then where will be his proud claims when he stands face to face with Christ? And Christ will say, for all the world to hear, the sin of man is so great that it deserves the eternal punishment of hell. God is justified when the wicked writhe in the eternal fires of hell. We don't like to talk about that. We don't like to think about it. Hell's a terrible place. If you have unbearable pain, there's coming a time when your pain will be eased. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. In hell, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Just suffering. Total suffering. Suffering that is so all-absorbing that that's all a man can do, is suffer. He can't curse God in hell. He can't commit fornication in hell because he's totally absorbed in suffering without end. Even modern evangelicals say that's too awful. That can't be. But God must be justified. He must justify his own holiness. And he must justify his own eternal purpose. And all the world will stand before Christ and say, we go to hell. We deserve it. Look what we did with God's word. And God will wrench the creation out of their filthy hands. And create through the power of Christ's redeeming blood new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness will dwell. And he will give that as the everlasting habitation of his people. But all glory will be God's, not ours, but God's. In all the works of his hands. That's what we want, isn't it? In final analysis, what happens to me is not very important, except that I can never be thankful enough to be a part of the Church of Christ. But God receives the glory for all that he does from the beginning of creation to the final victory of Christ. Thank you.